Well, friends, good evening. So, now today the topic of discussion is Article 141 of the Constitution of India. And as we all young lawyers and as a student of law, I'll tell you that why this article is so important, especially whenever we cite a judgment. So, Article 141 says law declared by Honorable Supreme Court. So, for that, before going into that, what are the contents and what are the essential elements of Article 141, we should understand that with regard to the definition of Article 141, it says law declared. Now, what is declaration of law? Declaration can never be said as making a declaration means to interpret a law in terms of constitution and to also tell the authorities that how a law should be seen and how in governance that law is applicable. So that is not a declaration. So if we are citing a judgment before the Honorable Court, and then we have to first of all see then what is the ratio in that judgment. Ratio means what is the law declare. So it means law declaration means any concept or any principle or any direction which is specifically given by Honorable Supreme Court, or a principle which is very important to achieve that verdict. For example, Supreme Court is putting light on any concept, and in putting light to that concept, Supreme Court is elaborating that concept, and thereafter because of that elaboration, that verdict, that decision has been reached. So that is ratio. It may vary from case to case. There are some other observations of Honorable Supreme Court as well. So they may not ratio. Now what is ratio decidendi? For understanding Article 141, we have to understand 2-3 concepts. One is ratio decidendi, means the part of a judgment, the observation, the direction which is binding, which is declaration of in Article 141. The second part is obiter dicta. Obiter dicta means any observation which court has said with regard to that controversy, but that observation is not directly concerned with that judgment. For example, if 2-3 principles are discussed by Honorable Supreme Court, if you detect a principle or any interpretation of the court from that judgment, and if that interpretation and that principle declaration is detected from that judgment, then the delivery of judgment is not possible. So that is ratio. So for that you have to read judgment again and again. And obiter means any other observation which court says in regard to that controversy, that is ratio decidendi. There is another very important doctrine which is very common, which is known as per incurium. Now what is per incurium? If suppose interpretation is going on in Honorable Supreme Court, a constitutional bench or a larger bench is sitting and considering an issue. So, and if a law is declared in that judgment. So a judgment can be said to be per incurium when a judgment interpretation an issue has left considering a judgment which is passed in the prior to that judgment. So if an interpretation, if a constitution bench is sitting, so it is a mandatory, it's a mandation for that bench of Honorable Supreme Court to consider all relevant judgment prior to that bench. And if single judgment is left, then that judgment will become per incurium to that judgment. So all these doctrines are a little complex. It's not that much complex. I'm telling you now the relevant Supreme Court judgments which will clarify your things. That declaration of law means ratio in the judgment. Obiter dicta means the relevant principles or any observation given by Supreme Court. So that can also be used in a court of a law as persuasive value. And the third thing is per incurium. So if a judgment declaring a law left any judgment which is passed prior to that judgment, so that judgment is per incurium to that judgment. Are you getting what I'm saying? So now I'm telling you very important judgments with regard to ratio decidendi. You will read it so that you can have a clear picture. And mind you friends, the law declared by Supreme Court is binding on each and everything in the territory of India, which Article 141 says. Declaration can also be understood in that manner if suppose a law is subject to interpretation. So declaration means that how that law should be interpreted, how that law should be used by government authorities, and whether that law is constitutional or not. So all these things come within the declaration. So for your benefit, I'll tell you the very important judgments with regard to the ratio decidendi is concerned. So you just note down a very latest judgment is Haryana Waqf Board versus State of Haryana, 2019 Supreme Court Cases, Volume 13, 382. In this Haryana Waqf Board, Supreme Court has very categorically said that what exactly is the ratio, that what are those principles in a judgment of Honorable Supreme Court which can be used as a binding precedent. There is a A very important judgment again for ratio is Nevada Properties Private Limited versus State of Maharashtra, Supreme Court Cases 2019, Volume 20, page number 119. Now, as far as orbital is concerned, that if you want to understand what exactly is orbital, and let me tell you one thing, that it depends from case to case. If you have to detect the ratio which has been declared by Honorable Supreme Court, you at least have to read judgment 3-4 times. As a student of law, we all must read at least 3-4 times. So now the important judgment as far as orbital is concerned is Preetipal Singh Bedi versus Union of India, Supreme Court Cases 1982, Volume 3, page number 140. Now you also read out judgments of per incurium. These are the three doctrines, and in the next video we will talk about the doctrine of stare decisis. If you read these three things, that what is per incurium, what is ratio decidendi, and what is orbital dicta. Because as I told you, ratio decidendi is something which come to your restore. It is the law which is exactly declared by Honorable Supreme Court. So now you note down the citation as far as per incurium. If you want to understand this doctrine, you have a great reference in this judgment, which is Saha Faisal versus Union of India, Supreme Court Cases 2020, Volume 4, page number 1. So you just read, and in the next video we'll talk about the doctrine of stare decisis. So thank you very much, friends.